Is Amazon Freevee shutting down? And Fubo sues the competition. These are the subjects that I'll talk about on this week's edition of the Saturday stream. So to start out, let's talk about Amazon Freevee and the possibility that they will shut down. So this was first reported on Wednesday by Adweek. They reported this based on 3 unnamed sources, stating that it is likely that by the second quarter of 2024, before the News Fronts, which is a media industry event focused on advertising, Amazon's expected to have a big presence there this year, that before that, Amazon will be shuttering Amazon Freevee and essentially moving their free ad-supported streaming and integrating it together with Prime Video, all under the same brand. After that was reported on Wednesday, Amazon pushed back. They released a statement to several different news outlets stating that there are no changes to Freevee, that Amazon remains an important streaming offering. So there's some things to unpack with this. I do believe Adweek's reporting. I think Amazon maybe has some reasons they want to distance themselves from that reporting. But ultimately, I do think it does look like Amazon Freevee's days, at least in its form that it exists right now, are numbered. So first, I think it's important to kind of contextualize and understand where Amazon Freevee exists in Amazon's streaming landscape. So Amazon Freevee originally started out as IMDb TV. At one point, you primarily could only watch it through the Prime Video app, but they did eventually make their own standalone Amazon Freevee app. But things have been a little bit complicated because last month, as you are probably aware, if you subscribe to Prime Video, Amazon made advertising available to all subscribers to Prime Video through all of the movies and TV shows, whether they are Freevee, whether they are available on Prime Video. And the only way to get rid of that advertising is if you pay a $2.99 a month fee. Now, even if you pay that $2.99 a month fee, however, though, Amazon Freevee's shows and movies will still have advertising. And in the mind of a typical consumer, you're paying that $2.99. You've still got advertising on these movies and shows that you're just watching all together through the same app. That can create a confusing and frustrating experience. So it sounds like perhaps Amazon is looking at their options to create less of a distinguishment between these two things and streamline the ad-supported movies and shows through their streaming services. Now, Amazon did unfortunately do some layoffs back in January. Through those layoffs, though, we can see some signs that they are indeed integrating Freevee together with Prime Video, because some of those layoffs hit hardest the marketing and strategy teams at Freevee. There were also 2 of the 3 directors at Freevee that went from Freevee over to Prime Video. We've also seen signs that, even more signs that they're integrating things together because some of the shows that were greenlit for Freevee are being shifted over to Prime Video. So all of these things would back up the reporting from Adweek that, yes, Amazon is going to be getting rid of Freevee, and I think this is where, unfortunately, things are going to be headed. Now, that statement from Amazon, it was open-ended. Notice they didn't say that they are not shutting down Amazon Freevee. They didn't say that there are no changes coming to Amazon Freevee. They just said there are no changes to Freevee. So that suggests that, yes, right now, Amazon Freevee is the same thing that it was yesterday. That doesn't really tell us a lot. I do think that it's looking like they're going to be doing some different things with Amazon Freevee in the near future. Now, Adweek's reporting, it did say that Amazon might be closing, they might delay closing Freevee based on the response to their inclusion of advertising with Prime Video. Essentially, if people, end up canceling Prime Video because they were mad about the advertising, or if there aren't enough people that sign up for the ad-free tier at the extra $2.99 a month, then Amazon may end up delaying this closure of Freevee. But for me, just as a casual observer looking at this whole situation, despite Amazon's statement, I do think that Amazon Freevee's days are numbered. There are other competitors out there, though, for the ad-supported free streaming space, like Tubi, like the Roku channel, like Crackle, Pluto, all of that good stuff. So on to the second story. This was another big deal that Fubo has announced that they will be suing Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Fox over their sports streaming service. Now, if you weren't aware, earlier a few weeks ago, those three companies that I mentioned announced that they're going to be launching a streaming service focused on sports by the end of 2024. Essentially, this looks like kind of a skinny bundle where it has the live channels that, you might get with a cable package or with a service like Fubo, like ESPN, like FS1, as well as some of the local broadcasters, in this case, ABC and Fox, as well as the stuff owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, TNT, TBS, True TV. But you don't have to pay extra for all of those entertainment networks. Now, from the position that Fubo's in, they are a company that provides, live channels over a paid service, and they have to go to companies like Disney, like Warner Brothers Discovery, and negotiate with those companies in order to carry those channels. And from the statements that Fubo has made, it sounds like with them being a sports-focused streaming service, what they really would have preferred to do in the first place is only offer channels like ESPN, like FS1, but when they go to Fox or Warner Brothers Discovery or Disney, in those negotiations, it's all or it's nothing. If they want to carry ESPN, they also have to carry Disney Channel. They also have to carry Freeform. The various different channels that company offers as a package deal. So, yeah, understandably, from Fubo's perspective, this is really frustrating because this very thing that they've wanted to do, now these companies are going and doing on their own, and, they are going to have this competitive advantage that Fubo does not. I could see where potentially over time, something like this, they create this streaming service focused on sports. They are now the people that provide the sports channels. They also provide the primary means to distribute those sports channels. When they go to negotiate then with a company like Fubo, they can say, hey, you want to, compete against our service now? If you want to carry ESPN, you've got to pay us double, or whatever amount, So it could over time create a scenario where prices are driven up, and it has this unfair advantage to anyone who isn't one of the big players like Disney or Warner Brothers Discovery. In this case, Fubo, they're at a disadvantage. I'm not an expert in antitrust legislation. I do think there are some interesting questions raised by this whole scenario. Another group of people that has reportedly been a little irritated by this whole situation are the sports leagues like the NFL and NBA. Apparently, they were not included in the discussions on this new streaming service that's going to be launched by Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery and Fox. So there's a lot of people right now that are not happy in the industry about this new sports streaming service. It will be interesting to see how exactly it shakes out. And there's also that investigation, of course, from the Department of Justice. So personally, my thoughts, I think this sports streaming service will become a thing and launch. I don't think any of these roadblocks are going to ultimately be successful in preventing it. But it will just be interesting to see, I think, especially with the sports leagues not being happy about this, how Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery and Fox weather this, rocky waters in dealing with these companies in the future. Now let's move on to the streaming charts. Now, these are, just with the way they collect their data with Nielsen, these are a few weeks delayed. So this is actually the week of January 22nd through 28th. But these are going to be the top movies on streaming for that week, as well as the top TV shows for that week. So at movies, at number one, we've got Netflix's, a movie on Netflix, The Hill. Now, I find this really interesting because, with the movies on Netflix, it doesn't matter if they were a huge success at the box office. It doesn't matter if they were critically acclaimed. It can be an old movie. They go on Netflix, and suddenly this random movie shoots up to the top of the charts. And with this film, The Hill, it's a sports biographical film. I believe it's about baseball. It has Dennis Quaid in it. Was not a success at the box office, was not critically acclaimed, came out last year, barely a blip on the radar. Now it's the #1 movie on all of streaming, thanks to its inclusion on Netflix. Number 2, we've got The Legend of Tarzan, another film. Wasn't a big hit at the box office, doing really well on Netflix, multiple weeks, now on these Nielsen charts. We've got Lift. I believe that one actually was a Netflix original. That one is at number 3. Super Mario Brothers movie, number 4. Killers of the Flower Moon, number 5. That one, it's interesting because this chart is actually based on the number of minutes watched. So it benefits Killers of the Flower Moon that it's like a 3.5-hour film. Queen Pins, number 6. Dumb Money at number 7. Number 8, I believe this was its debut week on streaming, if I'm not mistaken, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. I would imagine with that being the kind of caliber of film that it is, Paramount would prefer that it debuts higher. What would get it to number 1, I would imagine, is going on Netflix instead of Paramount+. Number 9, Elemental. This film, find it really interesting. When it came out in theaters, the narrative around this movie was that it was not a success for Disney and Pixar, but it had legs at the box office. It continued to make money, slowly over time, and now we're seeing it really take off on streaming. It kind of makes me think a little bit of Encanto. That film had, I believe, a pretty, mid-tier box office for Disney, but really took off on streaming. We're seeing the same thing with Elemental. Queen Bees, number 10. This film, I had to look this up. I had not heard of this movie. It came out in 2021. It is a romantic comedy that has an ensemble cast of primarily older women like Ellen Bernstein, Anne Margaret, Jane Curtin, Loretta Devine. Made $2.3 million against a $5 million budget. And here, we have it a few years later. It is in the top 10 on all of streaming, thanks to Netflix. Let's go over to TV shows. We've got Griselda at number 1. This is the film that had, series rather, that had Sofia Vergara, you might recognize from Modern Family. Miniseries on Netflix really took off. It's at number 1. Number 2, we've got Reacher on Prime Video. I won't go through everything here. A lot of these are repeats from the previous week, still on here, but notice at number 9 and number 10, we've got Ted and we've got The Traitors, two TV series rather on Peacock. Both of these are in the afterglow from that Peacock exclusive playoffs game that we had in January. So even going into that second week, we're seeing a lot of people stuck around and watch stuff on Peacock. And the final chart that I wanted to look at here, this is from all of January from Nielsen. This breaks down the percentage of people who watch streaming versus broadcast television and cable television. We see the largest single category right here is streaming at 36%. Now, there are some kind of funky things going on with this chart. They do include YouTube with their streaming, which is interesting. I don't really consider YouTube as apples to apples with Netflix, but you can decide that for yourself, I guess. But there's also some things that aren't included on this chart, like the live TV streaming services, like Hulu Plus Live TV and YouTube TV and Philo, all of that. For some reason, they don't include those on this chart. So if you consider that, if those were added in, that would make streaming, and if it was included with that category at least, it would make streaming even larger. So you can see here, it does also break down which companies had the most, streamed content. Number 1, we've got YouTube. Number 2, Netflix. Number 3, Prime Video. Number 4, going into the Disney-owned streaming services. And after that, we've got Peacock. That's interesting. Also shows just how powerful that playoffs game was for Peacock and NBC Universal. So Anyway, and cable, you've got that at 27.9% of people are still watching through a traditional cable service. Does not compare to streaming, still at the largest single category from this list. So anyway, that does it for this week's edition of the Saturday Stream. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel to stay up to date with all things streaming. I do have a new video that I'm editing together that compares all of the different live TV streaming services together. Been working on this video for a while, so if you want to check that out, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned.